One of the critical things that we must do as educators, I think, is understand what world we are living in and what world we must prepare our kids for. You know, when I began teaching, it was the twilight of the industrial era. And people had begun to talk about the new knowledge economy and the need for knowledge workers. Well, it turns out Peter Drucker coined that term in 1959. And a lot of people still have the mistaken belief that we continue to live in a knowledge economy. But in fact, we don't. Increasingly, knowledge is handled by computers. Computers collect, analyze, aggregate, disseminate the knowledge that we use every day. And even more significantly, computers are doing more and more of the routine work that we people used to do. Not just blue-collar work, but also white-collar work. Work like a CPA, work like reviewing the medical records and so on. What is increasingly clear to me is that we no longer live in a knowledge economy. The world no longer cares how much you know because Google knows everything. There is no competitive advantage in knowing more than the person next to you. And so the world doesn't, frankly, care how much our kids know. What the world cares about is what they can do with what they know, which is a brand new and completely different education problem. We must now prepare our kids for work, for learning, and for citizenship in the innovation era. So first, we need to understand that employers are taking an increasingly skeptical view of conventional education credentials. Because frankly, a college degree doesn't tell them very much anymore. A college degree, sadly, is often merely a certificate of seat time served in so many courses. Same with a high school diploma. It's a certificate of seat time served. It's not a certificate of mastery. It's not a certificate of competency. And so in a world where employers really want to know what you can do with what you know, those credentials simply don't add up. I'll give a couple of examples that begin to illustrate the problem. Google used to be famous or notorious, depending on your point of view, for only hiring kids from prestigious universities and only hiring those who had the highest GPAs and test scores. Well, Laszlo Bock, Senior VP of People Operations, comes along a few years ago and analyzes the data and discovers that the indices they've been using for hiring are, quote, worthless, unquote, his word. He goes on to say, the skills you need to succeed in a competitive academic environment bear no relation to the skills you need to succeed in the innovation era. Well, I thought, that's Google, you know, that's the West Coast, crazy folks. But you know, I was in Ho Chi Minh City 3.5 years ago at the invitation of Deloitte, the accounting and consulting firm. I was having lunch with the CEO before my presentation to area business leaders, and she kind of smiled and said, you know, we used to hire the best students from the best universities, alluding to where I work, I think. And she said, but it turns out they don't work out so well, she said. She said, now what we do is look for good students and we put them through a summer-long boot camp to see how they solve problems collaboratively. You know, increasing numbers of employers are announcing that a college degree is not a requirement for work. Penguin being a recent example, the notable publishing firm. So the question I've been preoccupied with is what must we do differently to prepare our kids for the innovation era?